In exactly 4 days of fighting, the United States military consumed nearly a third of its most advanced missile defense capability. This rapid depletion hit the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD, interceptor stockpile during the initial 96 hours of operations in the Middle East. Roughly 100 of these highly specialized interceptors were removed from the global inventory in a single window, according to Pentagon sources. This creates what defense analysts call the munitions depletion trap. By exhausting high-tier interceptors in a localized regional conflict, the U.S. military inadvertently strips the defense architecture from its primary strategic theaters. The math behind this burn rate is driven by a massive imbalance in unit costs. Loitering munitions like the Shahed 136 drone are mass-produced for as little as $20,000 each. To stop them, the U.S. relies on Patriot PAC-3 MSE or SM-3 interceptors. These weapons cost between $5 and $15 million per shot. Intercepting a cheap drone with a premier missile creates a negative cost-exchange ratio of up to 500 to 1. At these ratios, the defender faces a financial hemorrhage, required to spend at a rate the attacker can easily outpace. In a war of attrition, time favors the side that can produce cheaper mass. The U.S. maintains 7 THAAD batteries, each carrying 48 interceptors. That puts the entire global inventory at exactly 336 units. After 96 hours of engagement, roughly 30% of that total grid was gone. Current production cannot fill that gap quickly. Lockheed Martin manufactures these interceptors at a rate of only 50 to 80 units per year. At current speeds, CSIS estimates it will take 3 to 8 years to fully restore the inventory lost in those 4 days. The losses extend beyond munitions. The conflict also saw the destruction of an E-3 Sentry AWACS, a $270 million command aircraft with no active production line and a replacement timeline measured in decades. Deterrence in this environment is limited by the physical reality of inventory recovery. The American Defense Industrial Base is configured for steady peacetime procurement. It does not have the idle capacity to surge production for a high-intensity conflict. Supply chains for these weapons involve specialized seekers, solid propellants, and electronic modules that take years to source and qualify. These supply chains were already strained by the large-scale resupply of munitions like the Javelin and Stinger to Ukraine, which had already drawn down existing stockpiles before the Gulf crisis began. This leaves the U.S. with a bottlenecked industrial base, while peer adversaries like China maintain the world's largest defense manufacturing sector, producing missiles and drones at a higher annual volume. Current manufacturing limits make it physically impossible for the U.S. to match the output of a peer adversary in a protracted war of attrition. This industrial shortfall is most significant in the Indo-Pacific, where China's military strategy centers on the Taiwan Strait. China's anti-access area denial doctrine relies on saturating U.S. and allied defenses with a volume of missiles and drones designed to exceed their interceptor capacity. The depletion of interceptors in the Middle East has shifted the math of a Taiwan contingency, leaving a smaller pool of defensive weapons to counter China's offensive mass. Analysts at the Atlantic Council argue that Beijing may view the Gulf conflict as a template for a Pacific scenario. If regional drones can stress U.S. defenses for weeks, the larger Chinese military likely sees an opportunity to exploit these depleted inventories.
CSIS wargame data indicates that a successful defense of Taiwan requires the exact full-strength interceptor stockpiles that were just consumed. This creates a window of vulnerability, a multi-year period where U.S. defensive capacity is reduced, lowering the threshold for an adversary to act. The defense strategies of allies like Japan and Australia are built on the assumption that the U.S. missile defense umbrella is fully stocked and available. In places like South Korea, the physical presence of THAAD batteries is a primary pillar of the localized security posture. Allies are now facing a difficult calculation. If a regional power can draw down 30, the industrial base simply cannot replace what has been spent at the speed a major conflict requires. The arithmetic of modern warfare shows that the United States cannot fight 2 major conflicts simultaneously. By spending its entire defensive arsenal in the Gulf, it has inadvertently invited a catastrophic crisis in the Pacific.